Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Women of Color and Confidence. I am your host, Amber Rose West. Thank you so much for joining me this week. I'm going to be speaking with Tasha Wilson, Messenger of Hope. Yes, we are going to talk about how she got the title Messenger of Hope, and we're also going to walk through her journey to becoming a speaker and an author. Tasha currently works with women and students, helping them embrace their uniqueness, to live with authenticity, to go through their own healing journeys to become more confident people that self validate and really can live in a content and peaceful place no matter what has happened in their past. We are going to talk a little bit about the death of a parent, so I wanted to put a brief trigger warning on that. However, we spend most of our time talking about how her healing journey has allowed her to become a more confident woman that wants to help other women understand that no matter what has happened in your past, you can still have a bright, confident, peaceful, and content, happy future. It was such a great an honor, a pleasure to speak with Tasha today. So let's go ahead and get into the episode.
Which is funny because it's just more of like an outer expression of who I've always been, but I didn't always accept that. So we'll kind of get into that in the conversation.
Yes. Well, let's go ahead and get into it in the conversation. I know you
Yeah.
just seem like such a happy spirit. I'm super happy to have you here and be able to talk to you tonight. Um, so I wanted to hear a little bit more about well, first, let me just say, hi, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would love for you to introduce yourself a bit to the listeners today.
All right, sure. My name is Tasha Wilson, also known as Tasha W. Messenger of Hope. I am a native of the Eastern Shore of Maryland, which is like a small knit community where everyone kind of knows all of your relatives, or you're related to mostly everyone in the community, which is my story. But then I ventured out, like once I went to college, and it's so funny because I tell people never in a million years would I've thought that I would be a international bestselling author or a public speaker. It's just something that kind of fell into my lap. Because I was just navigating my own trauma and trying to figure out what life would look like for me and how I could make it as normal, if that's even a thing, as possible. And while doing that, I really understood the importance of trying to help other people who may feel the same way.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And thank you for your work. There definitely are a lot of people out here who need support, especially after traumatic experiences. And I was really inspired reading through a bit of your share with me and how
Yeah.
you have overcome a lot of things. And I want to talk today about how you got through that, mastering your fearlessness and really learning how to trust your own decisions. I would love for you to share a little bit what you're comfortable with, your story that sparked this movement within yourself.
Yeah. So when I was 16, I lost my father suddenly. He was in a work related incident. And it was one of those moments where the night before, he would say, "All right, I'll see you when I get off work." And, that's it. So that was just the routine. He would leave so early in the morning that my brother and I were still asleep. So we just knew that once dad got off work, it was great. Um, and I will never forget, I was so angry because my dad was never late. He was in the military. So, time was of the essence for him. And I'm waiting and I'm like, I don't hear from my dad. What's going on? Usually he would let me know if he is running late, which is a rare occurrence, but what is really going on? And when I had got the phone call that he had passed from an explosion, it shook me to the core.
Mm.
I never thought that something so detrimental or something so heightened would be a part of my story. But, little did I realize that was just the beginning. And so I went to college because I wanted to be separate from the community that knew me as, oh, that's the daughter of the man who, I
Mm.
wanted to find my own voice and I just didn't want to be labeled by something that happened to my dad. And so freshman year, I'm now 18 and I'm sexually assaulted by someone that I vaguely knew. And I think what really bothered me with that incident was that it was premeditated. And it's like, how does someone come up with a plan so devious to take advantage of someone else? And so, dealing with trauma back to back and not really having the space or the volume to find the words to explain what's going on was a lot for me. And so I essentially shut down. I essentially became withdrawn from people. I no longer loved who I saw in the mirror. I no longer valued who I saw in the mirror. And so what I tried to do was disguise who I was because I just felt like I lost everything, after losing my father and then after losing what I felt was my identity because of the sexual assault. I just didn't really know what to do. And so um, I want to say maybe 14 years after the sexual assault, I finally had that light bulb moment that I had to do something different. I was in, dead end relationships. I was going for jobs that I really didn't enjoy. I just really felt like the bare minimum was all that I was good for. And so I got tired of living beneath the surface and I got tired of doing things on a hamster wheel and I just wanted something new. And so I figured that the only way that I could change everything externally is if I had to start on the inside first. And so
Mhm.
I had to go back to the very root of where the pain stemmed from, which was the loss of my dad.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that I carried that burden of abandonment with me for so many years until I finally found the language to identify it.
At the time that it was happening, did it feel like it was happening to like, at you? Like
Yeah, I really did. Because we were always together. You know how they have these memes and these videos of, daddy girl, and
yeah.
that was me. I was always with him. He was very present in my life, and he was really the staple of our household. Knowing that my parents were high school sweethearts and then hearing how their story came about, and then, for them to have me and my brother and just have this whole vision for the family and then for it to be stripped away, it was difficult for me to even understand.
I bet even as an 18-year-old too. Like
Yeah,
I feel like
yeah.
it's that time in your life where you're just now stepping into this idea of being an adult and kind of going on your own and
Hmm.
having your own life. But there's still always this I got my parents in my back pocket kind of feeling,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So I imagine that it probably was a scary time to have that happen, and then what happens next? Like,
Yeah, it was just kind of like I always walk through life like, okay, when is the other shoe gonna drop? You know,
yes.
I always kept it safe because I felt like if I tried to do something beyond what I thought was my security blanket, then something else was gonna happen. I almost felt like my life was not fashioned or purpose for me to explore genuine happiness because everything was so painful. It's like things are going well and then something else. And it wasn't like subtle things, it was like major
Yeah.
things. And, it was kind of like, well, what did I do to deserve this? Or, is it a label that I'm walking around with that feels like,
Mhm.
pick me. I'm the one that's supposed to deal with heavy stuff and be okay with it. And that's just my story. And so, of course, my situations caused me to view myself differently and to feel like I didn't have any sense of worth. It made me feel like I was unlovable, honestly. I just felt like anything that would connect to me would be more so of a cancer. It would be something
Mm,
so toxic or so negative. And so I had a skewed perspective of what self-love was, self-worth, and even self-confidence.
yeah. Yeah, and those things are also when you're already, feeling a lack of those things in your life, it's also, difficult to be a Black woman in America in that time
Yes.
because we also are getting those messages from all of these other places as well. So
Mhm.
while we're attempting I mean, even without trauma, even without these experiences in our life that just shake us to the core, we're constantly getting this messaging that, you know we're not good enough or that we have to
Yeah.
prove ourselves more or that in order to be seen as equal, we got to do all these different things. And then you
Mhm.
throw onto it all these other situations. And it's like, how do you win? I
Yeah.
really appreciate you sharing your story. And I can completely understand how two, traumatic experiences back to back had put you in a mind space of being wary, being
Mhm.
nervous, not wanting to be outside of a comfort zone because, these times where you were completely comfortable, things happened that were so far beyond your control that changed your life, you know?
Mhm.
So you had said that, 14 years went by and you finally realized that you the change needed to come from within and that something needed to change. Was there a particular, like thing that happened or person you met or something where it like clicked and you were like, It's gotta change now.
My last relationship.
They'll do that to you, won't they?
Yes, you know how they say, when a woman changes her hair, she changes her life? That was so true. I actually started, after that last relationship, it ended in 2013. And um, I decided to lock my hair at the same
Yes.
time. So, it was just one of those things like, if I'm going to take this big risk and really change what I look like from the outside instead of staying what's comfortable, because I always wore my hair a certain way. And I realized I wore it a certain way to please my partner, right? It was
Mhm.
never about me and what I thoroughly enjoyed and what I loved about myself. And I'm like, okay, when all of these things are like gone and I'm no longer in a relationship, who is Tasha at the core? And I honestly didn't know. And so that was my spark to say, okay, I need you to really discover and rediscover who you are, because there were certain things about myself that kind of got lost in translation from the trauma. And I needed to go back and find that little girl, the little girl who was always optimistic, the little girl who always knew that she could be whatever she wanted to be and accomplish in life, and the girl who just loved herself fiercely and didn't care what anyone had to say. So I had to go back there to that place. And so what I did, I started unlearning behaviors,
Yes.
that negative self-talk,
Yes.
I started flipping it and using positive language and affirming myself and, really putting mirrors back up, because that was the thing. I took them down, putting mirrors back up and
Mm,
putting, words of affirmation around the mirror. So in the morning, I would see that first thing and reminding myself of who I am and who I've always been. Start centering myself around people who were never like in competition with me. Cause you know how sometimes you have those
yep.
frenemies, right?
Yes.
That, love when you're down, but when you start feeling good about yourself, it makes them uncomfortable. So I had to get rid of those and really find value in true friendships. And so really placing myself in spaces with people who were like a community, because it
Yes.
makes the difference. And then, finding mentors, people who saw who I was becoming and saying, hey, you can do this. And if this is your desire for this career, go for it. And really showing me tangible ways of how to get there. Because that's also important. And then really having a therapist, okay, because
Yep.
that mental health piece, I really had to get through the grieving process. I thought I was okay, and I really just moved around it, honestly. I never
Yeah.
really acknowledged how I felt in both cases, and really think about, how did I feel in those moments? Why did I feel like that in those moments? And now, how can I start doing the work to move through that? And so those things really helped me. And ever since, I've just gone on this like intentional inner glow.
Yes.
And it just feels amazing. And, a lot of people tell me that they see so much joy, because my eyes used to be so filled with sadness. I would just mask behind my accomplishments, and but when you really understand how your eyes are a gateway to your soul, you're going to continuously do the work to make sure that you're the best version of yourself.
Yeah. You just dropped so much knowledge. Oh my gosh, it's so well rounded. Out of all the things that I teach other people, you went straight down the line. I was like, she's doing it. She's doing it wrong. One of the things I I find with others who maybe they know that something is wrong or they feel like something is out of alignment with themselves and they know that they want to become more confident or to heal the things that have happened in their past. When they think about doing this work, a lot of the responses that I get are like, I can't change or it doesn't matter. Like the work that I'm going to do isn't going to get me there, so I don't want to do it. And one of the
Mhm.
questions, since you ran through everything, I kind of want to ask you, can you tell us a little bit like what you felt before you started doing this work, those 14 years after these two situations happened to you? And what's the difference that you feel inside of yourself now that you started doing the work and you're seeing that the work that you're doing has lifted your confidence and has put the glow back into your eyes?
Yeah, I was definitely terrified. Initially, it was kind of like, is it worth the risk? That was the question I kept asking myself. Is it worth it?
Like worth the
Y-
risk to put yourself out there
yes,
or to heal?
yeah, yep. Because being vulnerable is scary, especially when um, you're in two situations where people took your right to choose.
Mm,
So, with the loss of my dad, it was so public that we once were a family of four, and now a family of three, and now everyone is like intruding our space, and everyone is watching us under a microscope to see how we're responding to
mhm,
it. So we didn't have our choice of processing the grief that we would desire. When it came to the sexual assault, you took my choice of sleeping with me. You didn't give me the opportunity to say yes, right? And so feeling like in both situations, I was more so in a place of having my voice muzzled that I no longer felt like I wanted to suffocate anymore. And so I think I really held on to that, like, how can I truly find my voice if I can't recognize it? And so that's why I was like, okay, even though I'm scared, even though this is so new and different for me, I have to do this because am I always going to allow someone to stifle my voice and take over? Or am I going to say, you know what? I need to gain my power back. I need to really figure out what my voice sounds like, how my voice can shake and, equip rooms. But I can't do that if I don't tap into it. And so that's what I had to do.
wow, I love that. How can I use my real voice if I don't recognize it? You just blew me away with that one because it's so true, and especially when we're younger and we have these things happen to us, they tend to form a voice inside of our head that one isn't ours, but also would have never developed had those situations not happened. The
Yeah.
development of your inner voice or your self-talk, it is really based on the situations and experiences that you have throughout your life.
Mhm.
And I love that you acknowledged it so well. I want to be able to recognize my voice and be able to use it. And I'm not
Mhm.
doing that right now because it's covered with all of these other things.
Yeah.
So when you started your journey, um, you said it was terrifying.
Yes.
At what do you remember the points where it started to feel good or where you were looking back at yourself and you're like, this work is working?
Yes. I would say maybe 35 once I kind of got, because I was 30 when I really started. But 35, I would say was my sweet spot to just be like, what used to bother me doesn't bother me anymore. Or I'm now responding and not reacting. Or,
Mhm,
you know, having a boundary isn't a bad thing, those kind of
mhm.
things. Or no is a complete sentence. And I feel great about saying that. Or you know, listening to my body. That was another thing, not feeling like I have to be there for everyone else and neglect myself because, when you deal with things so traumatic at the expense of other people, you form people pleasing. And so
Mhm.
I had to stop doing that. And I had to be okay with not being a people pleaser. And so, for me, I'm looking back and I'm like, I'm smiling more. I'm excited about life more. This is actually working. I'm feeling good about myself. I feel confident in the things that I'm wearing. Okay, this is really working. I'm now getting in front of the camera. I'm
Yeah.
taking pictures, and I'm like, okay, this is really working. And just to feel so good about yourself and just have this sense of purpose and, just feeling like the same way that I can light up my own life, I can do that for other people. And so when people will see me and they said, your smile made my day, or,
Yeah.
just you acknowledging who I am today makes me feel good. That's when I knew that it was working.
Yes. I appreciate you sharing that because and you and I both work in this, personal development confidence sphere here. And I think that one of the biggest misconceptions that goes around is that the changes can happen quick, but when you really think about it, and you look back on the experiences of your life, and you think about all the people that you've met and all the things that have happened, all the good, all the bad, all the challenges, learning lessons, all the triumphs and victories, all of that has happened over a period of time. So
Hmm.
hearing you say, it took me 5 years to get from, there to where I was like, "Oh, I'm noticing all of these changes in myself and they're more automatic and I'm responding, not reacting." I think that people in their heads, they go, "Wow, that's such a long time. I want it
Hmm.
now. I
Yeah.
want to feel good now." Right?
Hmm.
But this work is a journey, and if you think about compared to the 14 years that you spent not doing that, I
Hmm.
think that's the real, not to compare them, but to look
Yeah.
at both of those things and say, "Well, I spent 14 years here, but I spent 5 years here." And just the amount of commitment and dedication to not continuing to live the way that you did for those 14 years. That shit is awesome. I love it. And I really hope that people take away from the fact that, like, you can't cure 14 years of hiding and covering up and not believing in yourself and taking down the mirrors in your house and not wanting to be seen and not speaking your truth in
Mhm.
6 months, Like,
Right.
you need time and you need and the other thing I like to say, I kinda wanna talk to you about this next too, is that not all tools work for everyone. And so when you meet one person, like
Mhm.
that's kind of why I love that you're on the show and we do pretty much the same thing. Is that when you meet one person and they have a toolbox, it's not automatic that all the tools in that toolbox are going to work for you and your situation, right?
Mhm.
Same with a therapist. I think
Yeah.
people really give up on therapy quickly because
Mhm.
they go to one therapist and they're like, well, that wasn't a fit. So therapy is not going to work.
Yeah.
It's like, "Hey, you gotta find the right therapist with the right tools, and then it works, trust me, it works." But it's the same with a healing journey, it's the same with a confidence journey, it's the same with a self-talk journey, right? There are
Mhm.
many different people out here who can teach you how to do these things, and, not all tools work for you, so if you try it and then you're like, I'm not feeling any better," like, first of all, it's gonna take a little bit of time, so give it,
Yeah.
at least a year before you're like, "This sucks," but
Yeah.
But also that know that, there's not a certain set of tools that work for everyone because everyone is so different. And
Mhm.
our self-confidence is so personalized to who we are as individuals because they're based on our past experiences. And
Mhm.
so you got to figure out what works for you and then keep doing it. And, one of my friends, Bianca, she always reminds me whenever I'm feeling like, you know, the dreams are too big and they're too hard and I don't know if I want to keep going, she always
Mhm.
reminds me like, how long would you keep doing it to get to where you want to be? And if you stopped, how would your life be? Like what would that look like if you just stopped it, right? And I think that
Yeah.
this can be applied to anything that we truly desire in the world. If we truly desire more confidence,
Mhm.
how long are you willing to work to get it if you know that it's on its way, if you know that it's
Yeah.
there? And what would you feel like if you gave up on that self-confidence and just, it's never going to happen because you're
Yeah.
not doing anything, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So, I would love to hear now that you are like when I asked you what self-confidence was, you said contentment and self-acceptance. And so I would love to hear those definitions that you have for yourself. How do you define those for you?
Yeah. So when I think of contentment, I think of embracing the journey, the whole journey of, the not so good moments, the great moments, and then automatically what landed me to this present moment here. And so being content that my journey wasn't linear. And then also being content that I'm at a place in my life where I fully accept who I am, but yet I still desire more, and it's okay. That life doesn't have to be option A or B. You can have both. And
That's
so,
right.
I think of contentment like, hey, I got options. You
Mhm.
know, and it's okay if, I have one area in my life that I'm like, you know what, I want to do this. And then, maybe a different season, I'm like, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to do something else. It's perfectly okay. And so being content with understanding that I may have a different need in a different season and not feeling like I have to be one dimensional. And so, um, that whole self-acceptance piece of saying it's okay to be multifaceted, it's okay to be a mystery, it's okay to continually evolve, because I think sometimes if you get to a place in your life, if people feel like they discovered all of who you are, then you haven't stopped growing, you haven't stopped learning. There's more for you to figure out, because with life being so continuous, you never get to a point of being stagnant or comfortable with where you are. You can appreciate where you are, but
Mhm.
still always know that you have options to gain more.
There's always more if you want it. This world is so full. I always say
Exactly.
you are full of endless potential and the world is full of limitless possibilities.
Hmm.
And you really do get to decide um, your role in your own life, right?
Yeah.
You can choose to stay in whatever it is that's not bringing you content, or you can choose to shift, whatever it is that looks like. And again, I keep coming back to this as I'm listening to you talk, this time frame piece. I think
Hmm.
people are so wound up so tightly about how quickly they can get things done. And I'm like, baby,
Hmm.
this is your life. Like
Okay.
you got a lot of it,
Yeah.
and this idea you're talking about, I did one thing and then I was, I did it and I don't really want to do that anymore. And I'm going to go over here and do something. I think
Hmm.
that, I was talking to April about this one in a previous interview where she was saying that she feels like the older people in her life really tried to stick into her this like
Hmm.
find something, commit to it forever. And I think that that was a very normal thing, especially
Hmm.
before social media. It was like, find a job, stay there for 40 years, all that stuff, and like don't give up on your pension or your healthcare, whatever it is. And
Hmm.
there's just so many more opportunities for us to learn and grow,
Hmm.
that the idea of being unhappy or
Yeah.
even like upset and mad and angry at going to work every day, like,
Yeah.
I don't want to do that, I want to do something else,
No
please.
thanks.
No, thanks. And I love that your work is allowing you to take this story and your healing journey to help other people and allow them the opportunity to do that too. Um, can you tell me a little bit about, what you do and how it is you help people?
Yeah. So, it's so funny. So I'll start with, it's so many layers, but that's what makes it fun. Being a speaker, I go to different venues and I really talk about my personal experience and how it kind of led me into being a speaker. And so I really talk about different personal development topics, identity, purpose, really finding your self worth and learning how to love yourself and not looking at things externally for validation.
Mm,
That's like my favorite part, because a lot of times when people see who I am now in the moment, they have no idea that I have a backstory. It's
yeah.
funny how we do that, right?
It's just
And
like all of a
so,
sudden we showed up one day as the confident versions of ourselves. And it's like, I
exactly.
have a history too.
Exactly. Like, let me just pull out this whole file cabinet. So, I do that. I also do coaching. I do small group coaching. It's called Unmasking the Inner Me. And
Mhm.
it's really a way for people to recognize that they already have the tools. They just have to tap into them. And then they have to use them the best way that works for them. And it's really trying to get out of that whole comparison trap and really look at who they are and realize that the tools that they have are accessible, instead of trying to do the things that other people are projecting onto them. And so
Right.
I love that. And of course, being an author, just really allowing my books to land in the fingertips of people I may never meet, but knowing that they can find something within the writing on the pages and really identify themselves within that and say, hey, I feel empowered to do this. If she can walk away from something like this, and I can too. And then it really challenges them to really think beyond the story of what they read. And so I'm a person who loves application afterwards. It's kind of like, all right, you may have caught a glimpse of my story, but let's discover your own. And what are some ways that you can start, sharing it with other people in a way that makes sense to you? And then, I also work in Title IX, at a college. And so that's also a great way for me to also empower others to say, I was you. I was on that other side of the table. And so I'm not just doing this for a paycheck, but I've lived your experience. And quite honestly, I'm still living it because every day, every dimension, every year, it's a new challenge that you have to face. And so, really reminding them that the healing doesn't stop because you're meeting with me and we're talking about it, but it's something that you have to continue to hold on to and continue to work through. So I love that I can really use my story in unconventional ways to help other people. And so I love not being boxed in.
Yes, sounds like it. I mean, you and I are so similar. I love all my different projects too. I'm like, I'm over
Yeah.
here, I'm over here, I'm over here, I'm over here.
Hmm.
And there was, I did have people early on in my career who were like, you need to pick something.
Yes, pick
Pick one
one.
thing and follow it forever. And I'm like, I wish I could, but it's just not who I am.
Nope.
And the second I tried to pick that one thing and like follow it, all my other projects were like, what about us? What about us? And I'm like, I'm so
Exactly.
sorry. And then, I had someone break it down for me really easily. They're just like, that's just, it's okay that that's not who you are. Especially, I'm a Gemini and people are like, Geminis hate being boxed in. They hate
Hmm.
rules. They hate schedules. Like you really need to give your spirit the opportunity to do whatever you want. And speaking of contentment, I found so much more contentment not having to focus on one thing. And I think it
Yes.
also is an energy thing, right? I have all this
Hmm.
energy if I'm putting it all into it's kind of like if you're in a relationship with someone and you just give them all your attention and all your energy and everything that you have goes at that one person, they're going to be like, "I need a break. Get away from me."
Yeah.
So being able to have these different projects to work on, I was able to leverage my energy a little bit better, and then I was like, "I'm so glad I didn't listen to all those people who told me
Yeah.
not to do that." I love to hear that you're having an I'm sorry, I was talking way too much about me. I love to hear that you're I was just relating so much. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's what's up." I love that we have that in common. But I love that you're making this beautiful impact on other people's lives and especially, younger people. I Do you have people that impact your life? Do you have someone or something that like has made a big impact for you?
Yeah, it's so funny. I always bring her up, but she was my first like official supervisor when I said, "Okay, I'm about to put on my big girl panties into the real world." And um, she's still in my life now, and it's so funny because when I first met her, I was still very much insecure. I lacked confidence, low self-esteem, but she always saw past that
Mm,
and she would always speak positivity into my life, and she's like, you may not believe what I'm saying now, but eventually it's going to make sense. And so she always challenged me to be a leader. She always challenged me to be my authentic self. She always challenged me to not shrink back and take up space. And so I really like admire how she pushed me, because I really give my kudos to her, especially in the professional setting and then all around who I am as a person. Because now that she's seeing everything that comes to light, she's like, I told you this was going to happen. And, of course, when somebody tells you positive stuff, you're like, okay,
right.
you're not in a place to really receive it. And then when it's happening, you're like, oh my gosh. And I mean, like every accomplishment, every milestone, she's been there. And we just have this unique relationship, because a lot of times if someone's like your former supervisor, you just kind of cut off all ties. But we communicate constantly and she's
Good.
always there, and she's like, as long as you're doing something, as long as you have something, I'm always going to be there. And so she definitely inspired me to not only recognize my voice but honor it in the same breath. And so it's because of her that I am so assertive and I'm so confident in who I am and what I have to offer.
Oh, it warms my heart. Oh, oh, these people are out here changing lives. They don't even know it. I mean, I'm sure they do know it, but it's just I have one of those as my 3rd grade teacher growing up, and, like, I it's so funny because out of all of the teachers that I've had over the years, there are some who I don't even remember their names. Can't even remember who I had, but her name was Miss Bird, Miss Jean Bird, and I like the exact same, she said these things to me when I was a kid, and I was like, "Okay, lady." You know? And then as I got older and grew up, I was like, "Miss Bird was right."
Mhm.
And they really do know what they're talking about, and the thing that I love about these very impactful people is that they see the ones who need it and then give it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
They're like, "I see." So, like, yeah, I see you in 10 years in the future, 15 years in the future. I know you can't see yourself yet, but like, trust me. And you're like, real
Mhm.
hard to even know what you're talking about. But, now that we're older and wiser, we know exactly what they were talking about.
Yes.
So let me ask you this. If you could, it sounded like she gave your younger self some pretty good advice. If you
Mhm.
could go back and give yourself some advice, what would you say to your younger self?
Um, Continue to be different, continue to not conform, and be like other
I'm like
people.
cheering for the you can't see me,
Yes.
but I'm like cheering. I'm like, yes.
Like, it's okay to be yourself. It's okay to be unique. It's okay to not follow the trends of the crowd.
Mm. Speaking of trends, oh my gosh. Isn't it so crazy how trends became like this thing and now it's like actually a thing we have to follow all the time on the internet? It's like
Yes.
I was wondering if the whole trending thing was going to like dissipate. Like the trend
Yeah.
was a trend, like trending was a trend.
Yes.
And it just became more of a thing, and I don't know about you, but I was like the other direction. It's hard running a business on social media sometimes because you have to trend. You
Yes.
want to be trending, but then there are just times where like, well, I want to be trending, but in my own way for my own
Yes.
things because I'm
Yes.
individual. There's so much power in being a unique individual. I love hearing your story about it and like your perspective on it because
Mhm.
it's so I meet so many different people, so I don't think that you can generalize it, but I feel like I meet more people who want to conform because
Yeah.
there's this pressure to
Mhm.
be liked, get likes on Facebook, to be
Mhm.
popular, to have people watch your videos or, want to work with you and all that stuff. And I just keep trying to put it out there that like the uniqueness is what gets people that want to be close to you. Like
Yes.
when's the last time you saw 10 of the same person and you were like, yeah, like I have no desire. I mean, maybe it's just me. I'm like, I have no desire to sit in a room with 10 of the
None.
exact same people.
No way.
No, and diversity really is such a spice of life. And
Mhm.
I think the thing that people scare about being unique is that if they've never done it before,
Mhm.
they don't know what to do. Like they're trying to find some sort of like uniqueness, but they're not searching for it in their own authenticity. They're just
Yeah.
trying things on and trying to figure out like, okay, I want to be unique, so let me like try these things on rather than like you said, going within and
Mhm.
asking themselves like what makes me unique that I actually want to express or I actually want to think or all these things. And then once you get to that place, it's just a matter of getting comfortable with people being like, "That's different,"
Yeah.
and understanding that different isn't always bad.
Right.
Different is not always bad. How did you learn how to start, trusting that process? Like getting like realizing that it's okay to not conform and that you didn't want to be like everybody else, but then also to once you made that decision to trust that decision and keep going.
Mhm. I think for me, it was more so, I started listening to other people first, and then I realized that didn't work. So I said, let me start listening to myself and see what that will look like. Will that be successful?
He
Because
just gave y'all a cheat code, so we're gonna say it again here. I started out by listening to other people, and that didn't work. So then I thought, let me listen to myself. To everybody, this can save you years.
Mhm,
I'm
mhm,
talking years because you want to believe so much that other people that are more popular or making more money or like have this and that,
mhm.
that you should be talking like them or acting like them, and then you'll get to where they are. No, those people are doing what they need to do for them. Now it's time for you to start listening to yourself and behaving from a place of authenticity inside yourself, because that's going to get you where you need to be. Okay,
Exactly.
back to you. I'm sorry. I just had to point that out real
Yeah, because when
quick.
you start doing what other people are telling you what you should do or how you should sound and all of that, it becomes more of a performance. And then now you're applying unnecessary pressure. And so that's now taken away from the passion because you're so focused on trying to, in my mind, I call it a puppet. You're allowing the puppeteer to treat you like a puppet. You're sitting there and you're trying to be someone you're not. So, how on earth are you going to be authentic with your story if you're being someone you don't even know? And so it just felt weird. It's like
Right.
wearing an outfit that's too small or too big. It's not your size.
Yes. That's exactly what it feels like, that uncomfortableness, like, you're still wearing clothes, but
Hmm.
you're like, it's like tugging here, it's tight here." That's exactly what it feels like. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off again. I'm just sitting
Yeah.
here just agreeing
So
with everything that
you
you're
just
saying.
have to. You have to. And I think once I
Do
started
you think
listening to myself, I trusted myself.
Yeah. Do you think that people have to go through the phase of, like, trying on clothes that don't fit to really value, you know, trying on clothes that don't fit to, like, really value something that fits, so, like, trying on other people's voices and personalities, or do you think that you could skip that and get right to the heart of who you are and have it still feel as amazing?
If you are like me and very stubborn, you're going to have to try the first option, listening to other people. And then, but I think
It's really
sometimes,
hard to trust yourself if you, like, have never done it before, or if the
exactly.
trusting of yourself has led you into places that have brought on, like, pain or hurt, and then you're just like,
Hmm.
"Well, I don't even trust myself, so I'm just gonna do that. Let me see what that is."
Yeah. And then for this to be new territory, because, I never thought that an author would come out of this or a speaker. Like, I never
Yeah.
thought that. And so for me, it was very different because naturally, I'm very introverted. I like my space. I like small intimate settings. It's just one of those things that kind of recharges my battery. But now I'm in spaces where I'm in front of people, I'm surrounded by large groups. I'm actually building connections beyond myself. And so, but I realized that's the beauty of it. When you really do things authentically, what used to be scary is now comforting.
Mhm.
So yeah, like I now, have this desire, oh, I want to be around people today, or I want to connect with
Yeah,
people. I want to build relationships, and that used to not be me at all. So,
yeah. And I like to say that a lot of this, you know, will help you expand your comfort zone. A lot of
mhm,
this work that we're talking about today, reprogramming your self-talk, learning how to speak from an authentic place that feels good to you, um, trying new things, having self-acceptance and self-validation. It's like uh, those things may not be inside of your comfort zone right now, and it's not my job as a teacher or a coach to, like, shove you out of your comfort zone. My job is to teach you how to expand the comfort zone to include those things that previously made you feel uncomfortable. And it's by, if you got to go try on other people's voices and other people's clothes, then, like, go and do it so that you recognize the lack of comfort in those places too,
yeah,
so that you can step into these other places that feel more comfortable as you grow, as you do the work, right? Um And what is it's true, like, it's uncomfortable when you're uncomfortable, but if you're faking it, it's also uncomfortable, so why
Yeah,
not try to get to the realness of it so that it can feel more comfortable, right?
right.
I love it. So, I saw, The Messenger of Hope. I wanna talk about The Messenger of Hope. Can you I remember reading it and being like, "Breath of fresh air." I love it. And then talking to you before we
Yes.
started recording, I was like, "Messenger of Hope." A breath of fresh air matched with your face. It's just so perfect. Tell me a little bit about how The Messenger of Hope came to be.
Yeah, so when I started going through that transformational part of my healing journey, and I really started to tap into who Tasha has always been, I realized that I've always been a messenger of hope. And, even younger, I always was that person who would help others shift perspectives of things. Like if someone who's just so negative or someone who's just always looking at the downside of things, I would always try to help them see things in a different light. And so, um, being younger, I used to not like that part of myself. And I'm like, why is everyone coming to me? Or why am I the glue? Or why am I the person that can change the dynamics of a thing? And then I realized it wasn't a burden, it was a gift. And so, um, when people see me, they tell me, you are you know, fresh air. Like you are a light, a spark, it's just you're so magnetic that people want to be around you. And, that's not something to be upset about. It's just
Mhm,
something you need to embrace. And so I realized that um I was able to really tap into other people's thoughts and vulnerability and allowing them to feel safe and
mhm,
sacred with sharing things with me that they didn't feel comfortable sharing with other people. And a lot of times it's because I just knew when to listen.
mhm.
Um, I valued who they were, before even knowing their stories. And the fact that I just saw who they were in that moment. And, it's hard for some people to be that intuitive, but for me, it always came naturally. And so, Tasha W. Messenger of Hope is just an outward expression of who I've always been internally.
Love it. Do you consider yourself an empath?
Yes.
You're like
Absolutely.
I love that. It's interesting to hear you talk about it from your perspective because I definitely resonate with a lot of what you're saying, which is probably why we ended up in the same field.
Yes.
But it's interesting because growing up, I never understood it, but the same things used to happen to me where like strangers would come up to me and they want to tell me their life story, or if they needed
Mhm.
help, they look in a crowd and they'd be like, like I just
Mhm.
felt like I was constantly getting these people that wanted to be close to me and also getting feedback that my energy could affect a room, whether it was from my
Yeah.
teachers who were like, "You're such a joy to have in class and you make everything go better," or like when if I'd go to work and I had a bad attitude, my manager would say, "Hey, you're bringing down the whole team." And it's like, it's
Yeah.
not my job to manage the emotions of the whole team. I'm having a crappy day, but like
Yeah.
I can't take it. And he was like, it just it's the way that it is and it is who you are, and for better or for worse, those are things that come up. And
Mhm.
it's interesting. I do not consider myself an empath. I can't. It's so funny. Other people call me an empath, and I think you know there's a difference between feeling everybody else's emotions, which I do think is a very real thing, and I'm sure you know
Mhm.
exactly what that is. And
Yes.
it's another thing to have an understanding of emotions that are happening and then being
Mhm.
able to communicate with the person having those emotions, which I think
Mhm.
is more what I have. I just have like my mother
Yeah.
my mother is a therapist, so I got a lot growing up. How does that make you
Yeah.
feel?
Yes.
And so I learned at a very young age that feelings are the driver of everything.
Mhm.
And that, I just understand the different types of emotions and levels of emotions, so when I see them happening, even when a person doesn't understand what's happening for them,
Yes.
I can look and be like, "These are 3 emotions that are happening in this person right now,
Yes.
and if
Yes.
you're gonna come to me and wanna talk to me about it, then I'm gonna ask you about these emotions." And,
Mhm.
I think that it can go both ways, right? Like, people can be very energetic and magnetic without being
Mhm.
an empath, and they can
Mhm.
do it they absolutely can do it with being an empath.
Yeah.
Um Wow, that's really cool. Um, I wanted to know you just have I'm just blown away by your energy, first of all. Like, I knew when I was reading, the questionnaire that you sent in, I was like, "This is gonna be a good interview," but then when I saw you come on the camera, I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be a great interview." I'm so excited for it. And you've talked so much about how you've taken your journey, and even though it took you some time to get to the place where you realized that,
Mhm,
excuse me, there was more to life than the things that had happened to you, that there was more ahead of you in your life,
mhm.
um, and that you could be a multifaceted person and help other people do it. I really would love to know what you would like to be known for.
Yeah, so, it's something I my answer just, it changes from but it always kinda gets back to the same vision. But, I always say that, I wanna be known as the woman who, silenced the critic, silenced the noise, but found the warrior within while doing that. And so, while I was, navigating life and discovering my own voice, I empowered other women to do the same. And so, for me, I've always been a giver, but I always made sure that while I'm progressively growing, I'm helping others at the same time. That's just something I've always done, something I've always been, and I'll
Mhm.
continue to do it. I am a person who, if I look behind and I see someone else struggling, I'm going to lift them up while I'm moving ahead too.
I had a whole episode about this. I had confident Black women is good for all women. Why? Because they do
Yes.
not leave people behind. When they see people behind, they're like, "Hey, come, come with me. Let's go
Hmm.
do it." That's so beautiful, and I can see it. As the words are coming out of your mouth, I can see it resonating and glowing all over your face. Um, One of the things that I really admire about women who come out the other side of, traumatic experiences is how much they want to make sure that other people who are going through these things know that, one, it can be done, and two, they're not alone. And
Yeah.
so your mission in the world sounds absolutely beautiful. For those of you out there that would like to connect with Tasha, I'm going to share your website. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
It's www.lifewithtashaw.com. Are you on social media? Can they find you on there?
I am. Instagram, Life with Tasha W underscore, and then Facebook, Tasha W Messenger Post.
I love it. Messenger of Hope. Yes, you are my friend. Oh, this was such a beautiful chat, and I really do thank you for sharing, being vulnerable with us. I do believe that the stories that come out of the women that are on this show, I just know are inspiring and motivating other women out there. And I hope that all of you enjoyed our show today. Please make it a priority to connect with Tasha either on Facebook, Instagram, or through her website. Is there anything you'd like to share before we hop off? I just want more
No.
of you.
Ah,
I'm like, I just
it's
want
so funny because I always say I never meet a stranger. So
oh, I love it. I'm happy that we're friends now and that we're connected and
yes.
other people can find you too. Oh, you're such a light. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really enjoyed myself.
Okay. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Women of Color and Confidence. I will be back in 2 weeks with a fresh episode. I'll meet you back here. See you then.